Hello everybody, welcome to the Canavan studio. This is my at-home studio. So as you guys get your kids to take home, I want you to kind of figure out how your space feels. There's also a few items that you might want to add to this just to make it a little bit easier for cleanup or just while you're working so you can grab things more easily. So as you can see, this would be kind of how a typical day would maybe look. If I was working on things, I got my clay, got that in a bag. While I'm working, I would probably want to have my my bucket here just filled with some water. I have my other plastic baggies ready to go. I might have this out with a little bit of water to create what's called slip. Just kind of have that hanging out. I got my little sponge. Overall, I'm going to use this fairly sparingly, but I might use it to help with some cleanup or just to kind of smooth out some textures. Okay. These are only for doing what's called slabs, so kind of like if you're rolling out cookies, right? So I definitely want to have my canvas down. I'd have these on either side. I'd put this on top and I would roll out that. So if you're not doing slab, then you don't necessarily need to have these out in front of you, but you never know, you might need them for something. Sketchbook, most likely you'll have your ideas of what you're making down in here. Okay, some other things though that you might want to add to your setup that I think would be really, really helpful if you have at home. If you just have some type of plastic cup, just to kind of make it easier to grab things. You might, all right, so during cleanup time, you'll want to have something else at home that didn't necessarily supply for you because it kind of depends what you want to use or what you have available. So just an old crummy towel, don't grab your mom or dad's new one, but just an old crummy towel. Okay, something that you could easily get wet and wipe up the dust. You never want to just brush it or sweep the clay dust. You want to make sure that you're using a wet rag or a wet sponge. So even if like maybe you redid a bathroom lately with some tile, you might have one of these types of sponges around that was used for kind of cleaning up the grout on a tile. Or even just like a really old kitchen sponge, that would work great too. So maybe you just want to replace that old kitchen sponge, just something to kind of get it wet and you're going to wipe up that clay dust. Okay. Another thing that's useful but not super necessary is some type of spray bottle. So like if anyone cuts each other's hair at home, like I cut my husband's hair, I'll use this to kind of spray his hair while I'm cutting it. This is also a super great tool. Doesn't have to be the misting kind, could just be a regular spray bottle, works great. And then always need music, right? Anytime that I'm working in the studio, I'm listening to podcasts or music. So something that kind of keep my mind busy, especially if I'm doing a tedious task, or it just kind of helps me relax if I'm wheel throwing, and I find that a lot of fun. So I have a little speaker or your headphones, whatever works for you. Something that you need to kind of get ready in your kit, just because I was kind of getting not a whole lot of time left as school is starting, is you guys got these 2 washers and also some thick fishing line, some 20-pound fishing line. So you just need to tie the ends of the fishing line to each one of the washers, and then I did a double knot in each. So this will help you with cutting the clay as well. And you can certainly add to your tool collection in your clay kits. Just make sure that it stays with your clay kit and it's not going back and forth to your kitchen where you're using your food. Okay, so just some things to kind of keep in mind here. At cleanup time, when your canvas gets dirty, please make sure that you carefully bring it over to a trash. Don't shake, but kind of brush the dust into the trash. All right, so I got my 2 wheels here, like that, and then I got my 2 double-sided stamp designs. Got a leaf, little dot. Okay, so I want these to dry. Anytime you make something, you don't want it to dry too fast. So we're gonna let this dry somewhat slow. Some projects require things to dry slower. Others, it's okay if they dry a little fast. But we're just gonna let these dry somewhat slow. So we're just gonna take our thin plastic bag, and I'm just gonna use this little top for now as a little bat. Sometimes you could store your projects in this bucket if it was empty. But for right now, I'm just going to use that because I'm going to use the bucket of water for cleanup. So I'm just going to kind of cover that up, like so, set it off to the side. I got my bag of clay off to the side. That's been double wrapped, so I twist. So I put the clay in, wrap it up tight, get the air out, twist 2 times, wrap it again, twist 2 times, close it up, right? All right, so any tool that I use that had touched clay as well as my table, I want to make sure that I wash up, okay? So this is where this bucket comes in handy. So for instance, I use my little sponge. So I'm going to rinse that off. And anytime I use this sponge, I don't get it too wet. Okay, but for washing off stuff, so like in this case, I use kind of the end of my paintbrush. So put that back in my little cup here. I may have used the end of this little stick, put that in the cup. So like this got a little bit dirty, just kind of wipe that off. If you need to kind of rinse it in the water, that works too. Careful with the pointy side. And then just kind of wipe off any dirt on there. Now, I don't want to put these back in the bag right away because I don't want them to get moldy or rusty. I might let them sit out for a little bit, or I would want to just kind of manually dry them with a dry towel before putting them back into a bag. One thing I would be careful not to put into your plastic bag until you know it's super dry is definitely your canvas. Your canvas, because it's a fibrous material, because it's a fabric, could mold if there's any moisture, especially if it's a warm space. All right, so I got my sponge. So this could also get moldy. Okay, so this is where having the bucket after the fact too is kind of nice because you can just kind of toss everything in there. All right, so I'm gonna set that off to the side. Okay, so all my tools are just kind of off to the side. I just had water in it for now. Okay, and I'm gonna take either my big sponge or your old sponge, your old kitchen sponge, and you are going to get that wet in your water bucket. Like so. And then just your whole space. So I might even move my clay and kind of go in circular motions, and I have a trash near me. And I can kind of push that into the trash or push it into your hand. And I'll just kind of put my project back, my extra clay back. So that way I know I got all of the clay dust. If for some reason I need to use my guide sticks and my rolling pin, I'd also wipe those down. Okay, it's just going over everything. I want to try to take care as much as I can with the clay dust. Clay is a lot of fun and overall very, very safe, but if you get lazy, then it's really dusty and it can really bother your throat and your breathing, but very rarely is that an issue for most contemporary potters. So like I said, if you don't have a big sponge, you can certainly use a towel. If you want to even just use an extra towel just to kind of dry down your space, that's fine. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to dump out my water. Now my water cannot go down a drain. So don't put it down the toilet, don't put it down the sink. Even if it's a utility sink, unless it's got a special trap, which yours probably does not. A trap is something that kind of catches extra gunk that some sinks might require. So like at school, I have those. So you guys don't have to be as careful at school. But even in my own studio, I have a bucket system because I don't have a sink yet. So I kind of do the same thing. So right now you can tell that my water is pretty dirty in here. Not super bad, but pretty dirty. Not as bad as like if I was wheel throwing. So I'm gonna actually go outside and just find a spot that I can dump it. Sorry, that I can dump it. So don't dump it in like someone's flower bed, but just maybe like a grassy patch behind a shed or behind a house or under a pine tree, like something like that that's not too far away from your back door. All right, so this is kind of my dumping spot. I have some hostas outside of my tree. So this is one of two. Sometimes I use over by where my hose is. But anyways, so I just kind of dump this out here. Okay, you might want to go inside, maybe put a little bit more water in or have a cup of water nearby, kind of rinse it out one more time, and then you can dry it out and put all your stuff back in it. Here's my second rinse. Ta-da! All right, so now that I've rinsed out my bucket, I'm just gonna take paper towel or just like a regular towel, just old one that you wouldn't use in the kitchen, that you can just kind of have nearby. Just kind of wipe that out like so, and then I can just kind of put my supplies back in here. squeeze the extra water out of my sponge. So that way that's no nuisance. I kind of like to put these little sticks inside if it's a big enough thing. Don't forget to keep your little water cup. That'll come in handy when you guys have to make slip, which I'll explain what that is a little bit later. Okay, maybe this is a good way to store your canvas, is just kind of draping it so it allows it to dry. Just kind of set that off to the side. If you have your sponge, just kind of set that off to the side. Your extra bag, if you need to put that up high away from kiddos at home if you have younger siblings. Okay. And your sketchbook. So everything's just kind of tucked off to the corner. Should be fairly easy to store things. So there you go.